Mara sat alone in the small communications room of Alara 7's central outpost. The night shift was always quiet. Only the soft hum of the old radio equipment and the faint clicking of cooling metal kept her company. Outside, the endless dark of space stretched beyond the windows. The colony was far from any major trade route, and weeks could pass without a single message coming through. That was why the sound caught her attention. At first, it was nothing more than a faint pulse in her headset, a sharp note repeating again and again under the usual background static. She leaned forward, adjusting the frequency dials. The signal became clearer, the rhythm steady and deliberate. Her brow furrowed. This was not a regular trade or patrol transmission. It was much older, a sequence she had only read about during training. She pressed a key to start recording and let the signal repeat. Long, short, short. Pause. Long, long, short. Over and over. She opened an old reference file and compared the sequence. Her stomach tightened when she confirmed what it was. This was a Deathworlder distress code, an SOS reserved for allies of Earth from centuries ago. The Alliance was an old story now, more legend than fact. Many believed the Deathworlders no longer listened, or that their fleets had withdrawn from the galaxy entirely. Her training told her the proper thing to do was log the signal and pass it to the Colony Defense Office in the morning. But the thought of waiting felt wrong. If the signal was real, someone was in serious trouble, and every minute could matter. She reached for the transmitter controls. The communications array of Alara 7 was not powerful. It was meant for local traffic and short-range updates to nearby stations. But Mara knew a way to boost its range. She rerouted the power from the auxiliary generators, dimming the lights across the outpost. Somewhere in the lower levels, machinery slowed, and the air system groaned under the strain. The signal she sent was short and simple, the way the old Alliance protocols had described. It carried the original SOS, followed by the colony's coordinates and her authorization code. When it was done, she sat back, heart beating faster than she liked. There was no guarantee the Deathworlders still had ships nearby. There was no guarantee they still cared. She checked the clock. It was past midnight. The colony above her was asleep, unaware that she might have just called down forces from the most feared warriors in known space. She remembered her grandfather's stories, told in the warm light of the home's fire. He had spoken of humans who fought like storms, who survived worlds where other species could not last a day. They were dangerous, yes, but they protected their allies without fail. If the pact was still honored, they would come. Mara kept the headset on, listening to the endless, empty static. Somewhere far away, if her signal reached them, the Deathworlders would hear her call. If they still existed. In the strength of the old tales, they would not ignore it. Hours passed. She wrote the signal into the station log and prepared her official report, but she also kept sending the message at intervals. By the third hour, her eyes were heavy, but she refused to sleep. The more she thought about it, the more uneasy she felt. Old codes did not surface for no reason. Someone out there was desperate enough to use it. A faint vibration rattled the floor. Mara paused, listening. It came again. Distant, like the deep rumble of engines high in the sky. She moved to the window, but saw only darkness. The colony's main lights had switched off for the night cycle. The mining fields lay silent under the faint glow of the gas giant that Alara 7 orbited. She returned to the console. The signal was still going, but now there was something else. A slight shift in the static. She leaned closer. A different frequency was trying to break through, faint but rising. Her hands moved quickly, adjusting the tuner until words cut through the noise. The voice was deep, the accent unlike any she had heard before. "This is Admiral Rowan of the Deathworlder Fleet Resolute. We have received your signal. Stand by." Mara froze. She had expected silence. She had expected to wait days before giving up. Instead, she had an answer within hours. Her voice felt tight in her throat, but she pressed the transmission key. "This is Mara Soren, Communications Officer, Alara 7 Colony. The signal I received was not ours. I relayed it as protocol directs. Coordinates and details have been sent." There was a pause on the other end. Then the same calm, steady voice replied. "Message received, Officer Soren. We are already moving. Maintain your broadcast until we confirm arrival." The transmission ended as quickly as it had begun. Mara sat back in her chair, barely able to believe what had just happened. The Deathworlders were real, and they were on their way. She imagined massive warships sliding through hyperspace, their crews preparing for whatever danger had sent the original SOS. She wanted to tell someone, but she knew the defense office would not open until morning, and even then, most would dismiss her as mistaken. Still, she kept the signal running, watching the repeating code blink on her screen like a heartbeat. When the first light of Alara 7's distant sun touched the horizon, Mara left the communications room for a brief walk. The colony looked as it always did. Quiet streets, low buildings built from the pale stone of the planet's surface, and miners heading to the early shift. But she could not shake the feeling that something was moving far beyond their sight, that the quiet sky above was no longer empty. She returned to her post, refreshed the transmission, and began the wait for whatever would follow. Somewhere, out in the deep, the Deathworlders' armada was coming, and Mara knew the galaxy would soon remember what their arrival meant. Far from Alara 7, in the deep black of space, the warship Resolute cut through the void with silent precision. Her dark armor reflected almost nothing, blending with the stars. Inside the command deck, Admiral Rowan stood at the central console, his sharp eyes fixed on the glowing symbols of the incoming transmission. Around him, the crew moved with quiet discipline, each officer trained for moments exactly like this. The code that had reached them was ancient, yet every Deathworlder ship still carried its key in their systems. It was more than just a distress call. It was a promise. Long ago, when Earth had first stepped among the stars, they had forged bonds with certain colonies. Those bonds were sealed with oaths, and the SOS code was the unspoken language of that pact. The meaning was clear. We are in danger, and we trust you to come. Rowan's voice carried across the deck. Set a course for Alara 7. Maximum jump speed. The helmsman acknowledged with a short nod, hands flying over controls. The stars outside stretched into lines as the ship entered hyperspace. The Resolute was not alone. Across the network, Rowan's order had triggered alerts to nearby fleets. Human warships from different sectors were converging toward the same point in space. Commander Bryn, Rowan's second-in-command, stepped closer. Sir, the colony's own defense force is small. Mining outposts rarely keep more than a few patrol ships. If they called us, it means the threat may already be in orbit. Rowan studied the map display. Red markers indicated possible enemy movement. It will not matter. The pact is still ours to keep. Bryn gave a faint smile. Many in the galaxy believed humans had grown distant, focusing only on their own worlds. But those who had fought alongside them knew better. Deathworlders were not quick to make promises, yet when they did, they kept them no matter the years or the cost. Meanwhile, on Alara 7, Mara sat before her console with tired eyes, but a mind that refused to rest. She had spoken with the Deathworlders hours ago, yet it still felt unreal. No one else in the colony knew the call had been answered. The Defense Office had dismissed her report as possible interference. They told her to stay on standby until they could confirm. She had wanted to argue, but she knew they would not believe her without proof. Still, she kept the transmission active, repeating the SOS exactly as she had received it. Somewhere in her heart, she trusted the stories her grandfather had told. He had served on a merchant ship when he was young and claimed to have once seen a Deathworlder cruiser up close. He had described the massive hull, the strange yet beautiful design, and the crew whose eyes seemed to carry the weight of survival itself. In the mid-morning light, Mara stepped outside for fresh air. The colony's streets were alive now, miners, heading to the processing plants, traders unloading goods from the weekly shuttle. She noticed the relaxed pace of life here, the same pace that could make people blind to danger until it was too late. Up in orbit, a different kind of life, moved with precision and speed. The Car Dominion's scout ships had already slipped into the system, their dark hulls absorbing the weak sunlight. The Car had been watching Alara 7 for months, marking its resources and defenses. Now, with their main fleet within a day's travel, the scouts sent back their final report. The colony's defenses were laughably small. It was time to strike. In the Resolute's command room, a warning light blinked on the sensor grid. A Dominion scout ship's energy signature had been detected on the edge of the system. Rowan's jaw tightened. "They know we're coming! Increase speed!" The crew obeyed without question. Engines roared to their limits. In nearby sectors, other Deathworlder ships did the same, their navigators plotting the fastest possible intercept. One by one, confirmations came in from the incoming fleets. The Armada was forming. Back on Alara 7, Mara returned to the comms room just as another sound reached her headset. Faint, mechanical, and rhythmic. It was not the SOS this time. It was a scan signal, the kind warships used when mapping a planet, for invasion. Her breath caught. She checked the frequency and confirmed it. The Dominion was here. She sent an urgent message to the defense office, her voice steady but quick. "This is Communications Officer Soren. I have enemy scan signals in orbit. Repeat, enemy scan signals confirmed." The officer on duty told her they would investigate, but Mara did not wait. She switched to the Deathworlder channel and transmitted the same warning. She did not know if they were close enough to hear, but she had to try. In the Resolute's communications pit, the message came through with faint distortion. Bryn turned toward Rowan. "She knows they are here. That operator is sharp." Rowan allowed himself the briefest nod. "Then we will be sharp as well. Signal the fleet. Full combat readiness on arrival." The bridge lights dimmed to red. Across the ship, hatches sealed and weapons systems powered up. In the lower decks, drop troopers checked their gear, locking heavy armor plates in place. The sound of tools and engines filled the air as engineers secured every critical system. Mara sat in her chair, headset pressed tight, trying to catch any sign that her message had been received. Her console showed no reply yet, but she kept repeating it at intervals. The colony around her went about its day, unaware of the danger above. She felt a cold frustration that no one seemed to understand how close the threat was. As the hours passed, clouds gathered over the horizon, casting the colony in a gray light. Mara stayed at her post, hands on the controls, eyes flicking between the radar display and the signal monitor. She did not know exactly when the Deathworlders would arrive, but she had a feeling they would not be late. Far away, but closing fast. The first ships of the Armada moved through hyperspace like silent hunters. These were not ceremonial fleets or peacekeeping patrols. They were built for survival and war, their crews hardened by the kind of worlds most species could not endure. The Forgotten Alliance was about to be remembered in the most direct way possible, by the arrival of steel, fire, and the unbreakable will of the Deathworlders. Mara could not see them yet, but somewhere in the darkness of space, Admiral Rowan and his fleet were racing toward her world. The moment they crossed into the system, Alara 7's quiet life would end, and the galaxy would once again learn what it meant when humans answered an SOS. The first sign that something was wrong came at dawn the next day. Mara was in the comms room running her routine system check when the radar display flickered. At first she thought it was a glitch. The old equipment often produced strange readings when the solar winds were strong. But this time, the shapes on the screen were too solid, too sharp to be a random error. She zoomed in on the data. 6 objects were moving in perfect formation on the outer edge of the system. Their energy, signatures were strong, matching the profile of Car Dominion ships. Her chest tightened. These were not scouts anymore. This was the beginning of an invasion force. Mara immediately opened a secure channel to the defense office. "This is Communications Officer Soren. I have 6 unidentified ships approaching from the outer system. Their formation and energy readings match Dominion warcraft." The reply came after a short pause. "Copy that, Officer Soren. We will alert the garrison and bring the planetary shields online." She ended the call but did not leave her seat. The 6 red dots on the radar were only the start. She suspected more were on the way. The Dominion never came with just a handful of ships. They came with fleets that could crush an entire planet's defenses in hours. The colony streets were waking up as usual. Miners prepared for their shifts. The local markets opened, with vendors arranging their goods. Children laughed as they ran between the buildings. None of them knew that high above, silent warships were drawing closer. Mara's friend Jalen stopped by the comms building on his way to work. He carried a bag of tools over his shoulder. "You look like you didn't sleep again," he said, peering into the room. "I didn't," Mara admitted. "We have incoming ships, Dominion ships." His easy smile faded. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," she said firmly. "They are closing in fast. The garrison is preparing the shields, but that won't hold forever." Jalen stepped inside, glancing at the radar screen. "If this is happening, we should get people ready to move. The shelters can hold most of the colony, but the eastern sector is too far from them." "I know," Mara said. "I'll send a warning message to all civilian networks. We can't wait for official orders." They worked quickly, Jalen helping her connect to the public channel. Within minutes, every terminal, comm unit, and local display across Alara 7 flashed a simple message. "Potential hostile contact in orbit. Prepare for emergency shelter." The message stirred unease among the people. In the streets, conversations shifted from mining yields to rumors of war. Some dismissed it as an exercise. Others began gathering supplies and moving toward the shelters. The market grew quiet as traders packed their goods. In orbit, the Dominion ships reached a holding position. From their command vessel, Lord Varen of the Car Dominion studied the planet below. His yellow eyes narrowed. The reports had been correct. The colony had minimal defenses, mostly old turret systems and a few atmospheric patrol craft. He ordered the first wave of troop carriers to prepare for descent. On the Resolute, Admiral Rowan watched the same system map from a different perspective. His fleet had not yet arrived, but their final jump point was close. The Dominion ships were already in place, and Rowan knew time was running short. "We will enter the system in 15 minutes, the navigator confirmed. Rowan's voice was calm but firm. "When we arrive, we will engage immediately. The Dominion must not be allowed to land uncontested." Back on Alara 7, the colony garrison came alive with activity. Troop transports rolled out of the vehicle bays. The planetary shield flickered into place, a faint blue haze stretching over the settlement. Mara knew it would not stop a full bombardment, but it might buy time. She stayed at her console, keeping both the local defense channel and the Deathworlder frequency open. She sent updates on enemy positions to both. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Deathworlder fleet was still on the way. She clung to that knowledge like a lifeline. Then the first strike came. A bright flash lit the sky as one of the Dominion. Ships fired a long-range plasma round. It slammed into the shield, sending ripples of energy across its surface. The shield held, but the impact rattled windows and knocked loose dust from every rooftop. Panic began to spread. Civilians ran for the shelters. Jalen returned to the comms room, his face tense. "They're targeting the shield generators," he said. If those go down, they can land troops anywhere. I'll relay it, Mara said, already typing. The warning to the Deathworlder channel. In the sky above, black shapes broke through the clouds, the first wave of Dominion dropships. Sleek and angular, they descended in silence except for the low rumble of their engines. The garrison's anti-air batteries opened fire, bright streaks of light crossing the sky. One dropship exploded in midair, scattering debris across the northern plain. The others adjusted their descent paths, avoiding the heaviest fire. Mara felt the building shake as one of the anti-air guns fired from the roof. The noise was deafening, but it also carried a strange comfort. It meant they were fighting back. At that same moment, Admiral Rowan's fleet dropped out of hyperspace. The Resolute emerged first, her massive form bristling with weapons. Behind her came the Iron Hand, Vigil, and a dozen escort cruisers. The sight of them alone was enough to shift the balance of fear in the system. Rowan did not waste time with warnings. The fleet opened fire the instant they locked onto the Dominion ships. Brilliant lances of energy tore through the void, striking shields and hulls alike. One Dominion cruiser spun out of formation, venting fire and debris. On the ground, Mara saw the sudden flashes in the sky and knew what they meant. She leaned forward, heart racing. The Deathworlders had arrived. The Dominion ships shifted from attack to defense, their tight formation breaking apart under the precise barrage. Still, the dropships already in atmosphere continued their descent. Rowan's orders went out to the fleet. Half the ships stay in orbit and finish them. The rest, follow me planetside. In the colony, people began to cheer as the Deathworlder craft roared overhead. Their hulls were dark and scarred, each one carrying the weight of battles fought on worlds harsher than Alara 7 could imagine. Mara watched from the comms building as the first of the Deathworlder landing craft descended. The shelters were still, filling, but now there was hope. The shadows on the horizon were still there, but they no longer belonged only to the enemy. The sky above Alara 7 was no longer calm. Trails of fire cut through the clouds as ships fought for control of the air. The Dominion dropships were still coming, but now they were met by Deathworlder craft diving to intercept. Explosions bloomed, high in the atmosphere, turning morning light into a harsh glare. Mara stayed in the comms room, her hands moving quickly across the console. She relayed coordinates to the Deathworlder channel, marking where enemy ships were landing and where the colony's defenses were weakest. Every time she sent a message, she hoped it would help someone on the ground or in the sky. Jalen entered with his jacket half-fastened and dust in his hair. "They're landing troops at the north edge of the colony," he said. "Shields are holding over the central sector, but if they take out the power relay there, we lose the whole grid." Mara checked the map on her screen. The relay station was close to the mining transport route. If the Dominion controlled it, they could open the way for heavy equipment and weapons. She switched channels and passed the warning directly to the incoming Deathworlder units. In orbit, the Resolute's main guns kept firing. Each shot was carefully placed, not only to destroy enemy ships, but to block any attempt to reinforce the ground forces. Admiral Rowan's voice was steady as he gave orders. "Keep the heavy batteries on the lead cruisers. Destroy their command ship first. Ground assault teams, prepare for immediate deployment." In the lower decks of the Resolute, Deathworlder drop troopers stood ready inside their landing craft. Their armor was thick and worn from years of service, marked with the crests of past campaigns. They moved with the calm focus of soldiers who had seen worse than this. The doors sealed, and the craft dropped toward the planet like steel arrows. On the ground, the garrison's anti-air batteries roared again, bringing down another Dominion dropship. The wreck tumbled into the rocky plain outside the colony walls, sending a wave of dust into the air. Still, other enemy craft slipped through, touching down in the northern industrial sector. Mara heard the sharp pop of weapons fire in the distance. It was faint at first, then louder, followed by the deep thud of heavy cannons. The fight had reached the surface. Jalen stepped closer to the window. "We need to move soon if they break through here." "We're not leaving yet," Mara said. "If the comms fall silent, no one will know what's happening. We have to keep this link open." The first Deathworlder landing craft came in low over the rooftops. Its engines shook the walls as it passed. The craft was heavy and angular, built more like a fortress than a transport. It slowed just enough to release armored figures by rappel, before racing off toward another sector. The Dominion troops were already spreading out in squads, their black armor glinting in the dust and light. They advanced with practiced coordination, moving from cover to cover as they closed in on the shield generators. In the narrow streets, the first clash began. The garrison soldiers fought hard, using their knowledge of the terrain to hold choke points. But the Dominion warriors were well-equipped and relentless. They pushed forward, forcing the defenders back meter by meter. Then the Deathworlders entered the fight. The first squad dropped straight into the path of an advancing Dominion unit. Their boots hit the ground with a heavy impact. They moved without hesitation, weapons raised, their armor almost absorbing the enemy fire. The sound of their return fire was deep and sharp, each shot precise. Dominion troops scattered under the sudden assault, and in moments the street was cleared. From her position, Mara caught sight of them through the window, tall, broad-shouldered, and completely unshaken by the chaos around them. She had heard stories, but seeing them in person was something else entirely. Jalen let out a low whistle. "Now I see why your grandfather called them storms in human form." "They're here to end this," Mara said, her voice steady. One Deathworlder trooper looked toward the comms building, giving a short signal with his hand before moving on. Mara realized they were using her updates to choose their routes. That gave her new energy, and she began marking more precise enemy locations. Outside the colony walls, a larger battle was unfolding. Dominion armor units rolled forward, their treads grinding over rock and debris. The Deathworlders met them head-on, their own vehicles heavier and slower, but built for crushing through obstacles. The sound of the clash was like rolling thunder across the plains. The shield generators came under attack again. This time, a Deathworlder fire team arrived in time. They set up a defensive line, cutting down enemy troops before they could reach the power relay. In the distance, another group of Deathworlders pushed toward the northern landing zone, determined to stop more enemy reinforcements from spreading. Mara kept her headset on, listening to bursts of communication between Deathworlder units. They spoke in short, clear commands, always focusing on objectives and never on fear. She sent them constant updates, even when the data was incomplete. Every second counted. Above them, the Dominion fleet was breaking. Rowan's gunners had concentrated fire on the enemy command ship, and now it burned, listing badly in orbit. Without clear orders, the remaining Dominion vessels began to pull back from the fight, but the ground troops still fought hard, unwilling to surrender. Jalen returned from a quick trip to the shelters. "Most civilians are safe now," he reported. "The shelters are almost full, but the eastern approach is still open. If they push through there, we'll have trouble." Mara checked the radar and saw a cluster of red signals moving fast toward that sector. She sent the coordinates to the nearest Deathworlder unit. Less than a minute later, she heard the roar of gunfire from the east, followed by the heavy crump of explosives. The red signals on her display began to disappear one by one. By the time the sun began to set, the first strike was over. Smoke rose from several parts of the colony, but the main defensive points still stood. The Dominion had failed to take the shield generators or the power relay. Their troops were falling back toward the landing zones, where the Deathworlders were waiting to cut off their retreat. Mara leaned back in her chair, exhausted but unwilling to leave. The fight was not finished yet, but the arrival of the Deathworlders had changed everything. The colony still stood, and now there was a real chance they could win. Admiral Rowan's voice came through the channel for the first time since the battle began. "Alara 7, this is the Resolute. The first wave has been stopped. Maintain shelter protocol. We will secure the area. Mara allowed herself a small smile. The first strike had been fierce, but they had held the line, and tomorrow the Deathworlders would push the fight back to the enemy. The next morning, the sky over Alara 7 was filled with the low rumble of engines. The air seemed to vibrate with the sound, and even those inside the deep shelters could feel it through the walls. For hours, the people of the colony had only seen scattered Deathworlder forces fighting alongside the garrison. Now, they would see what the full weight of their arrival meant. From the edge of the system, ship after ship emerged from hyperspace. They came in tight formation, each one massive and armed for war. The lead vessel, the Resolute, was flanked by the heavy cruisers, Iron Hand and Vigil, followed by carriers, escorts, and fast attack craft. Their dark hulls bore scars from old battles, each mark a reminder of fights survived and won. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Rowan watched as the rest of the armada fell into position. His voice carried a quiet strength as he gave orders. Fleet, spread into sectors 1 through 6. No Dominion ship leaves this system. Fighters, form defensive screens around the colony and prepare for strike orders. Hundreds of small craft launched from the carriers, streaking through the upper atmosphere like streams of silver light. They moved with speed and precision, covering every approach the enemy might use. Below, Mara stood outside the comms building for the first time in hours. She looked up as the shadows of the Deathworlder ships crossed the streets. The sight made her chest tighten with relief. The small groups of soldiers who had been holding the line yesterday were no longer alone. Now, the full force of their allies had arrived. Jalen joined her, shielding his eyes from the glare. "That's more ships than I've ever seen in one place," he said quietly. "They came because of one signal," Mara replied. "They came because of the pact." In orbit, the Dominion fleet shifted into a defensive arc. Lord Varen watched the growing Deathworlder formation and knew the balance had changed. His scouts reported that the humans had more ships than expected, and their smaller craft were already cutting off the Dominion's escape routes. But retreat would mean admitting failure, something the Dominion leadership would not forgive. "Form a spearhead," Varen ordered. "We break through their center, destroy their flagship, and the rest will scatter." Rowan anticipated the move. His fleet adjusted to absorb the attack, drawing the Dominion in close before unleashing a coordinated barrage. The space between the fleets erupted into fire and metal. One Dominion destroyer broke apart under the impact, its debris scattering into the void. From the planet's surface, the people could see flashes of light high above, each one a sign of the battle raging in orbit. The Deathworlder fighters darted between larger ships, striking at vulnerable points before pulling away to cover their allies. Mara returned to her console and listened to the steady rhythm of orders passing through the Deathworlder channels. There was no panic, only precise instructions and rapid adjustments. Every move was part of a larger plan to push the enemy back. On the ground, the fight was not yet over. Dominion troops still held positions in the northern sector, using damaged buildings as cover. The arrival of fresh Deathworlder units changed the pace. Armored transports rolled into the streets, their engines growling as they pushed debris aside. Troopers dismounted and moved in coordinated lines, clearing one building after another. Jalen reported from the eastern sector, where he had gone to help guide civilians to safety. The Deathworlders brought mobile shield units. They're using them to protect evacuation routes while they push forward. "That's exactly what we needed," Mara said, marking the cleared areas on her map. In the air above the colony, squadrons of Deathworlder gunships patrolled in tight loops, firing on any Dominion craft that tried to land reinforcements. Each time a dropship attempted to break through, it was met with a wall of fire. By midday, the Dominion fleet in orbit was in retreat. Rowan had given them a single chance to surrender, transmitting a simple message: "Leave Alara 7 and you will live." Varen refused, but his ships could not withstand the pounding. One by one, they began to pull away from the fight, only to find Deathworlder interceptors waiting along their escape routes. The battle in space reached its turning point when the Vigil and Iron Hand concentrated fire on the Dominion command ship. The larger vessel tried to shield itself with smaller escorts, but the humans broke through. A final salvo tore through its core, and it exploded in a flash visible from the planet's surface. Cheers erupted in parts of the colony where people could see the fireball. Mara heard the noise outside her building and felt a wave of relief. The enemy's command structure was broken. On the surface, the remaining Dominion troops began falling back toward their landing zones. Deathworlder forces advanced in tight formation, cutting off their retreat. The garrison soldiers joined them, moving with renewed energy now that the tide had turned. In one narrow street, a Deathworlder squad paused just long enough for Mara to see them clearly through her window. Their armor was marked with dust and scorch marks from the battle, but they stood tall, scanning every rooftop and alley before moving on. Even in victory, they were careful and deliberate. By late afternoon, the skies above Alara 7 belonged entirely to the Deathworlders. The last Dominion ship in orbit was disabled and drifting, its crew abandoning it in small escape pods. Deathworlder rescue craft collected the pods, separating prisoners from any potential threats. Admiral Rowan sent a message to the colony's leadership. "This is Admiral Rowan of the Deathworlder fleet. The system is secure. Ground operations will continue until all enemy forces are captured or neutralized." The words spread quickly through the colony. People emerged from the shelters, blinking in the daylight, some weeping with relief. The damage to the streets and buildings was real, but the colony still stood. Mara stepped outside again, letting the cool evening air wash over her. The sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a golden glow on the battered rooftops. Overhead, the massive shapes of Deathworlder ships moved in slow patrol arcs, their presence a shield against any new threat. Jalen came to stand beside her. "We made it," he said. "We did," Mara replied, "but not alone." They watched as a formation of Deathworlder fighters streaked low across the colony, their engines leaving faint trails in the air. The crowd in the streets stopped to look up, and for the first time in days there was no fear in their eyes. That night, the Deathworlder fleet held position above the planet, a silent promise that the colony would remain safe. The Armada had arrived in answer to a simple SOS, and their presence now filled the system with the certainty that the pact was alive and unbroken. The morning sun rose over Alara 7, painting the dust and debris of the colony in warm light. For the first time in days, the streets were quiet, but the calm was only temporary. The Dominion had retreated in orbit and on the ground, but pockets of enemy forces remained scattered across the northern and eastern sectors. The Deathworlders would not allow any survivors to regroup. Mara sat at her console in the comms building, updating coordinates of remaining enemy positions. Her fingers moved quickly, sending each point to the Deathworlder units already mobilized on the ground. Every movement they made was precise and deliberate. She felt a mixture of awe and relief. She had seen them arrive. She had seen them strike. And now she was watching them finish the job. Admiral Rowan's voice came over the secure channel. "All units, proceed with coordinated clearance. Any Dominion soldier found outside evacuation zones is to be captured if possible. Avoid civilian casualties. Protect the colony." In the streets, the Deathworlder squads moved in synchronized lines. Their heavy boots struck the ground with quiet force, and their weapons glowed with energy as they swept through alleys and open areas. The Dominion troops tried to hide among the ruined buildings, but the humans anticipated every move. Mara marked the locations as the squads advanced, seeing the enemy being surrounded before they could escape. Jalen returned to the comms building, his clothes dusty from helping guide civilians yesterday. "They're everywhere," he said, pointing to the screen. "The Dominion troops think they can disappear into the ruins, but the humans are covering every street and alley. They've been trained for this, Mara replied, her voice steady. The ones you see moving slowly now? They're making sure no one escapes. On the outskirts of the colony, the Dominion tried to regroup in small clusters. They communicated in hurried tones, but every message was intercepted by the Deathworlders. Soon, these groups found themselves trapped between armored vehicles, on one side and infantry squads on the other. Each attempt to break through ended in defeat. One squad of Deathworlders entered an abandoned factory where a small enemy unit had holed up. The doors were heavy, but the soldiers moved like shadows, silent and careful. Within moments, the squad had taken control, disarming the Dominion without harming the building itself. Mara watched as coordinates updated, the red dots on her map, disappearing with each success. Even the civilians could feel the change in momentum. People who had been hiding in shelters began cautiously emerging, watching as the Deathworlders methodically cleared the streets. Their presence was reassuring, a living demonstration that the colony was protected by forces far beyond anything the Dominion had anticipated. Jalen and Mara worked together, ensuring no civilians were caught in the sweep. Evacuation routes were still active, and the Deathworlders used mobile shields to protect those moving to safety. The combination of human precision and careful planning was almost unstoppable. In orbit, the remaining Dominion ships tried to regroup, but they were under constant attack from the Deathworlder fleet. The Resolute and her escorts moved like predators, striking at the ships with calculated fire. One cruiser attempted to escape through the system's outer ring, only to be cut off and disabled by the Iron Hand. Rowan's strategy was clear. The Dominion would not leave the system alive. "No vessel escapes," he said over the comms. "This system is under our control. Complete the clearance on the ground while we finish orbital operations." On the surface, Mara saw that even the Dominion soldiers who attempted to flee into open terrain were intercepted by human infantry and light vehicles. The Deathworlders worked in groups, always in communication, always one step ahead. Each squad that completed a mission reported back, allowing others to adjust their movements in real time. Jalen watched as a group of enemy soldiers tried to hide in the central marketplace. They were armed and ready to resist, but the Deathworlders approached carefully. Within moments, they were surrounded. One soldier raised his weapon, then dropped it when he realized escape was impossible. The humans did not harm him, following Rowan's orders to capture when possible. Mara marked the location, sending updates to ensure that no other units were nearby to interfere. The last pockets of resistance were in the northern industrial sector. The Dominion had tried to use old mining tunnels to evade capture. Deathworlder. Engineers quickly scanned the tunnels, mapping safe entry points. Troops entered carefully, using communication devices to coordinate movements and avoid traps. One by one, the enemy units emerged, disarmed and defeated. By midday, the colony was completely under control. The streets were cleared. The Dominion. Troops captured or neutralized, and civilians were safe. Mara allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. For days she had worked at her console, coordinating with the Deathworlders, guiding their actions, and ensuring the colony remained unharmed. Now, the task was finished. Admiral Rowan transmitted a final message to the colony. Alara 7 is secure. All Dominion forces have been neutralized. You are safe. The Deathworlder fleet will remain in orbit until the system is fully stabilized. Mara relayed the message to the citizens, and cheers went up across the colony. People stepped into the streets cautiously, looking at the human soldiers who had cleared the danger with awe and respect. For many, it was their first time seeing the Deathworlders up close, and their presence left a lasting impression. Jalen approached Mara. "I've never seen anything like it," he said. "The way they moved, the way they fought, it was perfect. They do this for a reason," Mara said quietly. "They never abandon their allies. That's why the signal mattered. That's why they came. Even as the sun began to set, the Deathworlder soldiers continued their patrols, ensuring no threat remained hidden. Their vehicles moved slowly through the streets, and small squads checked every building and open area. The Dominion had underestimated the humans, and now their defeat was complete. For the first time in days, Mara felt a sense of pride. She had sent the signal that brought these warriors here, and her actions had saved the colony. She thought of her grandfather, remembering his stories about humans who survived worlds that no other species could. Seeing it firsthand made her realize the truth of his words. Above the colony, the fleet maintained its position, a silent promise against any future attack. Rowan had made it clear the Deathworlders would always honor the SOS. Their presence now was more than protection. It was a message to the galaxy that some humans never broke their word. Mara and Jalen walked through the cleared streets together, observing the damage and the recovery efforts. Repair crews were already moving in to fix minor destruction, and civilians were helping wherever they could. The community had survived, stronger for the ordeal, and it was clear that the Deathworlders' arrival had changed the colony forever. As night fell, Mara returned to the comms building. She kept the channel open, listening to the Deathworlder fleet report on system security. Even though the battle was over, the humans continued to coordinate, ensuring the safety of everyone under their protection. Rowan's voice came through, once more. This system will remain under watch until the Dominion is removed from nearby sectors. Alara 7 has shown resilience, and it will continue to be protected. Mara closed her eyes briefly, letting the weight of the last days settle. A simple SOS had brought this powerful force to their aid. She knew that the galaxy could be dangerous, but now she had proof that some humans never failed their allies, no matter the distance, no matter the odds. The colony slept that night under the watchful presence of the Deathworlder Armada. The streets were calm, the shelters empty, and the air filled with quiet hope. Tomorrow, Alara 7 would begin to repair, to rebuild, and to remember what it meant to have allies who never forgot their promises. The morning after the battle, Alara 7 was quiet, but the calm felt earned. The streets were filled with the scent of dust and smoke from last night's clashes, yet people walked among the rubble with determination. The colony had survived a threat it had no hope of defeating alone, and the presence of the Deathworlders had made all the difference. Mara moved through the streets, checking the communication hubs. Every system had been secured, every signal monitored, and all civilians had been accounted for. She paused to watch a group of young children running past, their laughter returning to the colony for the first time in days. For her, that was the real victory. Jalen walked beside her, carrying repair tools to assist the damaged shelters. "It's hard to believe it's over," he said. "I keep expecting the Dominion to show up again." "They won't," Mara said firmly. "Not for a long time. The Deathworlders made sure of that. They keep their promises." From orbit, the Deathworlder fleet maintained patrols, scanning for any hidden threats. The Resolute hovered above. The colony, like a dark sentinel, and other ships moved in precise patterns to cover the system. Admiral Rowan's presence was felt even from the planet's surface. He had ensured that the battle ended quickly and decisively, but he had also guaranteed that no innocent life was lost unnecessarily. In the central plaza, the colony's leaders gathered to meet with the Deathworlder representatives. Mara joined them, standing quietly at the edge of the group. She had done her part by sending the SOS and coordinating the defense, but the moment felt larger than her alone. One of the Deathworlder officers, a tall figure with battle-worn armor, stepped forward. His voice was deep and calm. "Alara 7 is secure. Your people have survived because you called for help and because your allies responded. Remember this day. Remember the strength of cooperation." The leaders of the colony bowed their heads in respect. "We are grateful," one of them said. "We did not know we had allies who would come across the stars for us." The officer's gaze swept the gathered humans. "You are never alone when you honor the bond of trust. The pact is old, but it is still alive. Today we proved that to all." Mara's heart swelled. That one simple SOS signal, sent with hope and a sense of duty, had brought this armada across the galaxy. The thought that such a small act could lead to this enormous response filled her with awe. Jalen nudged her gently. "You did this," he said. "Without your action, they wouldn't have come in time." "I only sent the message," Mara said. "They are the ones who fulfilled it. That is what makes them remarkable." In the streets, civilians began helping each other clear debris and repair minor damage. The miners, traders, and workers moved with steady hands, rebuilding what had been broken. Small robots assisted with heavy lifting, guided by the Deathworlders' technology. Mara and Jalen worked side by side, helping wherever they could. By midday, the colony's systems were fully operational again. Energy flowed steadily through the shield grid, which was now stabilized and reinforced by Deathworlder engineers. The central communication hub was repaired, and updates on all sectors of the colony could be transmitted without interruption. High above, Rowan watched the progress from the Resolute. He spoke into the comms channel to the fleet. "Continue orbital surveillance. Maintain readiness, but focus on system repair and civilian safety. There is no reason to engage further unless provoked." Below, Mara smiled at the sight of small, automated patrol units moving through the streets. They were designed to alert humans and Deathworlders alike to any danger, yet their presence brought comfort rather than fear. As evening approached, a ceremony was held in the central plaza. The Deathworlders stood together with the colony leaders and key civilians. Mara was invited to speak, her role in coordinating the defense recognized officially for the first time. She stepped forward, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This colony survived because we were not alone. A simple SOS brought allies across the stars. Today, we are proof that trust and cooperation can overcome even the greatest danger. Let us remember that no action is too small when it is done with courage and faith in others." The crowd responded with applause, many wiping tears from their eyes. The presence of the Deathworlders made the moment solemn and inspiring. They had fought, they had protected, and they had shown the humans of Alara 7 the true meaning of alliance. After the ceremony, Mara and Jalen walked toward the observation decks at the edge of the colony. They looked up at the sky, where the Deathworlder ships moved in slow patrol arcs. Even as night fell, their lights and engines created a quiet, constant presence. "They'll stay until we're fully stable," Mara said. "And then they'll leave. But the lesson remains. We are stronger than we think when we act together." Jalen nodded. "And maybe one day, if another SOS is needed somewhere else, we'll be the ones answering it." Mara smiled. That thought gave her hope for the future. Humanity, she realized, was capable of more than anyone believed. They had survived the Dominion threat not just because of technology or numbers, but because of a willingness to act and to respond to others in need. That was the essence of humanity, a strength far greater than any weapon. Over the following days, the Deathworlders helped the colony stabilize fully. Their engineers repaired damaged buildings, reinforced the shield network, and trained the garrison in advanced defensive tactics. Mara observed quietly, taking notes and learning from their methods. Every step they took was precise, every decision made with efficiency and care. By the end of the week, the colony was operational once again. Markets were reopened, mining operations resumed, and civilians moved freely without fear. The Deathworlders began to prepare for departure, their ships lining up for hyperspace jumps back to their assigned sectors. Admiral Rowan's final message to the colony was simple but powerful. Alara 7 is safe. You have survived because of trust and courage. Remember that strength and pass it forward. The galaxy is large, and there will be times when that trust will be needed again. Mara watched as the Armada departed, feeling both sadness and gratitude. Their presence had changed everything, and the memory of their arrival would never fade. She knew that the colony would thrive because of it, and that the galaxy itself had been reminded that humans honored their promises. As night fell over Alara 7, Mara looked out across the city. Lights shone from the streets and buildings, reflecting the resilience of the people. Somewhere beyond the stars, the Deathworlders moved on, but the bond remained. A simple SOS had summoned a fleet, and a promise had been kept. For the humans of Alara 7, that promise was now a part of their history, a story they would tell for generations. And for Mara, it was a reminder that courage and action, no matter how small, could bring the farthest and strongest allies to stand beside you in the darkest hour. The stars above were calm again, but the memory of the battle and the arrival of the Armada shone brighter than any light. Humanity had proven itself once more, not through conquest, but through the strength of character and the unwavering will to protect those in need. Alara 7 slept peacefully that night, under the watchful memory of allies who had come across the galaxy to honor a single signal. The SOS had been answered, the threat removed, and the promise of protection had been kept.